5, 4, 3, 2.
Everybody, this is Mayor Randall Woodfin here along with Councilor Hunter Williams of District 2.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate you having us tonight.
Absolutely. So everybody, especially for the residents of District 2, in lieu of our town hall meeting tonight at Osseware Mitchell School, we've decided out of abundance of caution to make sure that we are protecting everyone in the city to do this town hall from a virtual town hall. And so what we'll do tonight, just like we do at our yearly town hall meetings in each district, provide you all with an update on some of the things we've been doing within District 2, within all the neighborhoods over the last year. With that, at some point of time, Hunter can jump in. We have some rich information for you, so we'll jump in. As many of you all know, your community resource officers are Melanie Martin, Harold Houston, and Jasmine Fells. They can always be your go-to person, not just at your neighborhood meetings, but if you have any issues in District 2, be sure to reach out to these three people. They're very good at what they do, and they're always here and ready to serve you. In addition to that, we always want you to take advantage of 311. We're happy to say that our 311 system is actually working. So take the time to dial it, use it if you have an issue or problem or concern within your neighborhood, within District 2. And this allows you to actually provide the information, and you get to keep a tracking number. And so there's information on the front end and back end of this issue to be resolved.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to expand on that a little bit. You know, a lot of times people call our office and say, well, I've used 311 in the past, it hasn't worked, I haven't gotten the response I've needed, there's been some issues with it in the past, and so on and so forth. Well, you know, the mayor's office and this entire city hall has spent a lot of resources actually re-scrubbing the system, getting the entire thing working. So we are asking, a lot of people still call my office or email me, but going forward so that the mayor's team and his department heads can triage all of the requests coming in to City Hall, that you first, I mean, you're always welcome to call my office, but first call 311, get a case number so that his department heads can triage that and that so we can get whatever the requests are fulfilled for you guys.
All right. You heard it first, directly from your counselor. Please be sure to call 311 first. So with that, we want to go into one of the #1 topics that is always of concern across the city since day one, and that is the removal of blighted restructures that are beyond repair in our city. Across the city, we've torn down many of them. Within District 2, just over the last 1 year, what we've done is tear down 45. So structures demolished in District 2 since January of 18 have been 45. 41 of those have been contracted by the city to demo, and 4 have been done by those actual private homeowners. So there's more work to continue to do in this topic, which leads to the next page. We wanted to talk about the continuation of demolition and condemnation in District 2. And so on the slide that you see Brown Springs has 1, Eastwood has 1, Roebuck Springs has 1, and unfortunately Southeast Lake has its high share. The good news of this number, you see, we are well aware of those houses that are beyond repair that need to be torn down. Here from this slide, you see they are in the queue. So we'll continue to address and remove these blighted structures that are beyond repair. In addition to that, we want to talk about some zoning enforcement cases. So what you see here is there's actively right now 80 enforcement cases in District 2. These 80 zoning enforcement cases address issues around business use of residential property, outside storage, home occupation violations, fence violations, and inoperable vehicles in some cases. I think it's important to note that these zoning enforcement cases never stop, but we will continue to be aggressive in addressing for those residents who continue to be in violation of some of our zoning rules and zoning laws.
Mayor, in talking about that, I want to thank you very much for that. I know that a lot of communication with residents in District 2 are things that surround that zoning enforcement piece. Seeing 80 zoning enforcement cases is a huge uptick from what we've had in the past. I also want to point out that you know, sometimes residents call in and they say, you know, we sent this in, this is a zoning violation or a code enforcement violation, and whatever's still there, 24, 48 hours, 72 hours down the road. Well, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been an inspector that's gone out there that hasn't cited that person, and that person has to show up in court. So that person, you know, there's a process that takes place with every single zoning or code enforcement issue, and that, you know, we're working on it, but there is it's a timeline that takes place with each one of those. So you might not see a difference in 24, 48, 72 hours, but you know, that doesn't mean that an inspector hasn't gone out there, that the person hasn't been cited if they need to be, and that hasn't made its way to municipal court. That's correct. I mean, you all should know that as it relates to these zoning issues, this is something that Councilor Williams and I talk about all the time, something he's very passionate about, holding me accountable, making sure that we address these zoning issues. So this is something that we are very attentive to and will continue to monitor and address. The next thing we want to talk about is the housing code enforcement violations. And so throughout the city, there are many housing code enforcement violations. But even in your district, District 2, since 2019, the first month, January of 2019, so that is about right at 14 months ago, we've addressed 732 of these inspections. These include properties reported to be in violation of the City Code Property Maintenance Code, which is deteriorated roof systems, damaged windows or doors, chipped exterior paint, damaged or deteriorated and inadequate utility service. These things, although are on private property, we still have laws that are on the book that our residents have to comply with. If you've been a resident only 6 months, or you've been living there 60 years, or anything in between, it's important that people pay attention to and know the city properties maintenance code and keep their house up to make sure all the residents in that neighborhood are protected. And so these inspections allows us to make sure residents are complying with our property maintenance code. Anything you want to add to that? Yeah, you know, one thing that has been really special and unique about District 2 as a whole is we've seen a lot of uptick in home values, and we've seen actually, you know, people talk about gentrification, but we've seen a lot of residents remain in the communities as home values uptick, which has been exciting to see. But one thing that that assists communities as a whole is making sure that, you know, that these violations are not occurring at your own residence. And so obviously the city is very serious about making sure that each residential owner is doing his or her part to make sure that they're not a nuisance to their neighbors or to the neighborhood as a whole. And so with 732 inspections and violations since 2019 of January, I think that shows not only the importance that the city of Birmingham takes, but also a lot of those stem from neighbors calling their own neighbors saying, you know what, I keep my house up, I cut my lawn, or I don't park my car in the front, whatever it is. So we expect that out of the rest of the neighborhood. So that shows the passion of the entire district, and we thank you very much for enforcing that. Gotcha, brother. So the next thing we want to talk about is the critical repair home applications. So throughout the city, we get questions about Mayor or Councilor Williams, are there any programs as residents we can apply to if we are seeking assistance because of a shortage of financial resources to either repair a roof or a porch or some issue dealing with their home? We're happy to say that, yes, we have an active yearly critical repair home program. A lot of that funding comes from the federal government, and it is shepherded through our Birmingham Community Development Office. In District 2, we have 16 applicants who are in the queue. You see Brown Springs with 1 home, Eastwood with 1 home, Huffman with 1, Roebuck with 6, and South Eastlake with 7. As you see, the average cost for a critical repair grant for a home is around close to $11,000. And the smallest amount is anywhere from $2,100, and the maximum amount is $15,000. This critical repair program, again, as I stated, allows us to address
some form of home repair for those who not only apply but qualify to be a recipient of this and are awarded to receive this.
Yeah, it's a great program. It allows us to continue to move all of our neighborhoods forward. So
yes, sir.
That's something that we hope to is going to continue this next fiscal year.
So the next thing we want to talk about, we've talked about our housing code inspections, but we want to talk about general code enforcement as well. And a lot of this is dealing with occupied properties where our Department of Public Works goes out, which includes inspections. You see here, you have 137 active general and or environmental code enforcement cases in District 2. Again, South Eastlake has the highest number of 78 active general or environmental code enforcement cases where an issue has been brought to our attention that includes junk or debris, salvage material that shouldn't be in the front or backyard, overgrowth, and one of the biggest things we see, unfortunately, is inoperable vehicles. So these 137 active cases, we look to close out by making sure at some point where people have to actually come to our environmental court, which is usually at municipal court, there's some form of justice in the form of protecting their residents of this neighborhood, making sure that an inoperable vehicle is removed, making sure that junk debris is cleared, or anything of that nature. So this is a big deal because as you see, with the 137 active cases, our team here, our employees are active and are at work to make sure we can remove these issues that continue to bring a black eye or blight to our neighborhoods.
Yeah, and this is another, another thing that we want to talk about in terms of just how serious that the city is with enforcement, and also going back to, I called 311, I called Councilor Williams' office, I emailed the mayor, whatever happened, and it's been 3 days and there's still, the grass is still high next door, whatever the code enforcement issue is. Like you said, it's a process. Everybody has the right to show up in municipal court. Municipal court will then mandate that they fix whatever the violation is. But with 137 cases, it's obvious that
that's just one district.
Just within District 2, it's obvious that when you call 311, when you call City Hall, it is taken seriously. It might not seem like it's moving very fast, but that's because there's a process, and the process is not visible until the problem is fixed. That's
right. That's correct. So the next thing we want to talk about is illegal dumping. Many of you all have heard about our dummy campaign, Don't Dump Mess in My Yard. But you have active right now 29 illegal dumping cases throughout District 2. Again, South Eastlake is jumping out at 19. That's literally over 2/3 of those cases are in one neighborhood. But separate from that, 30 cases of illegal dumping have been resolved since January of 2019. Now, illegal dumping continues to be a problem throughout our city. And if we were at our regular town hall meeting in person, I imagine one of you all would want to know more detail about the dummy campaign. The short version is this. As we continue to be more aggressive in catching those who are illegally dumping in our city, if they live in our city or are bringing it into our city, we need additional eyes and ears. We've gone through a process that now allows us, you as a citizen, now can get as close as possible to a citizen's arrest. If you see a person or persons illegally dumping anywhere, we want you to pull out your cell phone. We want you, if your cell phone has the capacity, to record and or take pictures of the illegal dumping activity. If the person has a vehicle, try to get a picture of the actual tag. Bring that information down to the magistrate's office. The magistrate in return will either issue a summons for a person to appear in court and or a warrant for that person committing that offense of illegal dumping. Either way, this is to empower the residents who see this stuff in their neighborhoods to take an active approach. I do have a note. This does not mean you are to engage that person. As a matter of fact, we don't want you to talk to them. We don't want you to tell them to stop. We don't want you to have any interaction with this person that is committing this illegal activity. We simply want you to, if you can, to record that information, take a picture of that act and bring it down to us, the magistrate's office, and we can do the rest.
Yeah, so one thing is, I think that this is one thing that you and I find ourselves talking about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a citywide issue, but it's definitely
Got your high share in your district.
Yeah, definitely has. It's we have our share in District 2, so it's something that the mayor and I talk quite frequently about. I want to thank the mayor for actually coming out to Southeast Lake and personally and dealing with some of these illegal dumping issues. That, you know, sometimes you really have to see it to kind of believe that somebody would go to such great lengths to create such a mess, either on the street in which they live or maybe even in their own front yard. But one thing that was unique about a lot of these cases in District 2 is that it seemed that it was actually residents sometimes that lived in the neighborhood in which they were dumping. So, you know, that's very hard to tackle if people are going to dump within their own neighborhood, sometimes with the same street in which they live. So we just remind residents that we're serious about these cases. Bulk trash pickup happens every 3 weeks, definitely every month, on every street in the city of Birmingham. And there's really no reason to go down the street, go in your neighbor's yard, or whatever the situation might be, to dump trash illegally. It lowers the property values in your neighborhood. It creates a headache at City Hall, but more importantly, your neighbors have their property values lowered and are extremely unhappy with what's going on, and they might be doing the right thing and trying to take care of their own property. They might be raising children, you know, whatever it might be, and they don't want that in their neighborhood. So we are serious about this. The dummy campaign has been great, been very successful, and I'm very excited to see that there has been this many enforcement actions, because we know that there's been this many illegal dumping sites.
So again, please take heed of what the counselor said. There are a couple points to add to what he said. One, all of the councilors across the entire city and representing their individual districts takes this seriously. We do not want to hold the hands of nasty adults, period. You know, a stop sign, a red light, or getting off an exit on the interstate is not your trash can. Please stop littering in our city. Please stop illegally dumping in our city. We've already had a successful process of a resident catching someone dump. And so we just want to, again, empower you, the citizen resident. If you see someone illegally dumping, take action. Don't engage the person, but take action with your cell phone. Bring that information to us. We will continue to tackle this issue. The next issue we want to talk about, you know, we started this conversation, we talked about blight removal. But once you remove a house that's beyond repair, you end up having an empty lot there. You all have heard me say it before. It is not sustainable for the city to be in the grass cutting business. However, we have to address and attend to these empty lots throughout our city. There are well over 10,000 of them, and that is a low number. But even in your district currently, just for District 2, we've cleared 610 lots, cut or clean, since January 1 of last year. 287 of those vacant lots were cut by contractors, and 323 were cleaned by the owner or city staff. And so we have to continue to address the issues of overgrown lots, and we know as it gets hotter, this issue becomes more prevalent in our face. Currently, there are 185 vacant properties properties active in the weed bill in District 2. What that simply means, you all, the law does not allow us to just go on private property just because the grass is overgrown and cut it. We have to go through a legal process and then get approval before we can go on that private property. Once we do that, there is a lien that's placed on that private property's land or home or owner, and make sure we become whole. Sometimes that takes a while, but we will continue this process until people are held accountable. But until then, we still have to find that balance of making sure these overgrown lots are cut and managed.
Yeah, and you know, just highlighting one thing that the mayor said is, you know, with 10,000 lots within the city of Birmingham, plus all of the city right-of-ways and all of the other responsibility of our public works team, it is actually an impossible lift for us to be able to cut every single lot within the city of Birmingham that someone privately owns and either has abandoned that lot or has chosen not to maintain that lot. So it's very important that the citizens actually maintain lots that they own. If they have multiple houses, rental houses that are unrented for whatever reason or whatever's going on, if they have the ownership of a lot, it's important that they cut it and keep it maintained. Another thing with grass cutting is, for some reason, with the city having all of that responsibility, having to cut every single right of way and all 10,000 lots and everything that Public Works is tasked with doing, cut the strip of grass in between the sidewalk and the curb. It's amazing how many people will say, well, since there's the sidewalk and there's the curb, I'm not going to cut that. I'm going to let that be 4 feet high and make the city come cut it. And I'm going to cut my front yard. My front yard's going to look very good. It's going to look pristine. It's going to look like Augusta National. But there'll be 4 feet of weeds between the curb and the sidewalk. It takes 5 seconds when you're already out there to cut that.
5 seconds.
And so maybe 10. But
10 seconds.
But really, it's something that take pride in your entire neighborhood and cut that little strip of grass.
For everything he said, the word that jumped out the most is pride. When we talk about litter, when we talk about illegal dumping, when we talk about cutting these lots, the city is going to do its part. And even with the number of employees we have, even with the equipment we have, with the city this large and these many issues, we need our residents to always step up. We need our residents to always have pride. And the more pride we have in where we live on our individual block, our individual street, our entire neighborhood, our community, then our city will look pretty. Our city will remain beautiful, but we need the help of our residents. And a lot of that is built in you having pride. So thank you so much for those who do their part. The next thing we want to talk about is a combination of what I would define as, the infrastructure where we drive and walk. So between potholes, paving streets, and sidewalks. We'll jump right in with the potholes. I know many people in District 2, you have these major thoroughfares. And I know this is a sensitive topic to a lot of folk. You got Porto Madrid is a major thoroughfare through District 2, Rugby Avenue. You have Crestwood Boulevard. You have Montclair. You have Montevallo. And you have so many other streets that are major thoroughfares that make up the heart of District 2. And so starting with the potholes, there are too many across the city. What we've done is we bought and purchased some new equipment that has allowed us to be better at addressing our pothole situation. Many of you all complaints have been higher in the recent weeks. A lot of that is due to the rain and what the rain has caused, which includes making some of the pothole repair have to go back out to that same site. So I start with this. On the screen you see, just since January of 2019, so in the last 14 months alone, we've repaired 1,635 potholes just in District 2. Throughout the city, for all 9 districts, we average filling or fixing about a minimum of 200 potholes a week. So there's a lot of work for our pothole crew. We will continue to address these issues, and you all continue to call 311, and we will continue to fix these potholes. The next thing we want to talk about is a little bit more detail around potholes repaired and patching. And so we wanted to go into the patching work, which allows us to cut the square instead of just filling the actual pothole, which gives more protection for the street. As you see here, there's been 1,062 feet of patches since last year in 2019. And I won't list all the addresses, but you see a lot of them on Red Lane Road, Gene Reed, and School Terrace, and many other streets where we've started the actual patchwork, which allows us to actually cut the square to better preserve the actual street so the pothole doesn't expand. The next slide is now talking about street resurfacing. So I know Councilor Williams is going to have a lot to say to this, so I'll start it off and kick it to him. We came in office a couple months apart, and when we got here, there was already a 5-year unfunded plan to pave streets. So the city of Birmingham overall, as many of you know, had a $50 million backlog worth of street paving. This 5-year plan was supposed to allow $10 million a year over the next 5 years to pave the worst streets in order. We are now currently in year 2 of our paving. Just this week, this Monday, a few days ago, a little bit over $6 million was started in our 2nd year paving. And so what streets does that include? You see the number here of 5.26 miles. You see a little bit about 1.3 million worth of street resurfacing just in your district of the money that was allocated this past Monday. But breaking that down, here are the streets. Now this may be too small for some of you all, so I'll read some of the streets. Some of the streets that are in the current phase of being repaved, resurfaced, are Brookhurst Drive from Gaston Highway to Medford Road, the Summit Drive from Ferndale to North End, Orchid Road from Parkway East to Self Drive. You got Cooper Hill Road from, I think that's NC to Montclair Road. You got 10th Court South from 53rd Street to 54th Street. 54th Street South from 10th Avenue to 11th Court. 11th Court South from 53rd Street to 12th Avenue South. You got Garden Lane from Dalton Drive to South Garden Circle. Sanford Drive from Dalton Drive. Annie Laura Drive from Dalton Drive to Robinson. In addition to that, you have Royal Street from Dustin Ave to Gladstone. Swallow Place from Swallow Lane to, to actual, I guess the other side of Swallow Lane. You also have Scenic View Drive from city limits to Windy Lane. Mountaindale Road, which a lot of y'all complain about Mountaindale area. And then you have Montclair Road from east of Montevallo Road to the city limits. Crest Hill Road from US 78 to Montclair. Roebuck Parkway, not all of it, but a portion going to the I-59. And then 12th Avenue South from Claremont Avenue to 56th Street. These streets that I've just named, which are a lot, I probably need a glass of water at this point, are currently in the queue to be paved.
Yeah, I think, when you said that, I'm going to have a lot to talk about. I think that my view of what the city of or a municipality's role is a little bit more conservative probably than some of my colleagues on the council. I think that the city's job is to provide police and fire protection. So when you pick up the phone and dial 911, a firefighter or police officer shows up at your house, I think the city's job is to provide those basic public work services like picking up the trash and recycling every single week. And also it's to provide a solid infrastructure. So that means sidewalks and street resurfacing. So when the mayor says that I'm going to have a lot to talk about, that's because I have had a lot to talk about him with these issues. I think that he knows that it's extremely important, not only to me, but also all the residents of District 2. You guys do a really good job of communicating with me on sometimes a 30-minute basis. But I know that one of the biggest things that the district as a whole is asking for is to resurface some of these streets, right. And provide some of these basic services around the infrastructure.
So that leads us to year 3. Year 3, from a fiscal year standpoint, will start July 1, where the money will be put in the queue, and at a certain point we got to go through a whole state bid law process and all of these things that take quite some time. But once we get there, we'll be able to pave in year 3 2.43 miles street segments, which will be a little over the 900,000 mark just for District 2. Now within that, I think here's the favorite part. Many of you all have been complaining about Oporto Madrid Boulevard for a long time. It's finally here. Within year 3, we'll be able to address Oporto Madrid. In addition to that, a lot of you all have been complaining about Grants Mill Road from Secret Hollow. Yeah, Secret Hollow Road to the 4000 South Street or block. And then we'll be able to do 86th Street South from 86th Place South to 8th Avenue South. Now that may seem small, but 2 out of 3 of those are some of the highest complaints we've been receiving since we've been mayor and council. So we're happy to say in year 3 we'll finally be able to address these and actually put monies towards repaving these.
and the mayor's going to get very mad at me off camera after I say this, but maybe we can get a little bit more in there too. We'd love to see that over $1 million. I see y'all changed the slide already, but we'll see. We'll come back to that.
So the next thing we talked about potholes, we talked about street paving. Wanted to talk about sidewalk shoe. Very similar to having a 5-year street paving plan. There will be a 5-year sidewalk plan as well. And for District 2 for this year, we're doing about 1,600 feet worth of sidewalk repair projects. And it's about a close to $65,000 investment. And for this year, it'll be a lot of the sidewalks along the 3rd Avenue South area from 81st Street South, Northwest, and then 1080. So it's a lot of feet, but that allows us to start a project within District 2, but also in the other 8 districts, and over time, over 5 years, be able to make sure and continue to make sure all of our sidewalks are walkable and ADA compliant. You want to add anything?
Yeah, one thing, when you and I both came into office, we came into office with infrastructure that had not been properly maintained for quite some time, and that's everything from
Sidewalks
bridges, sidewalks, to street resurfacing, and sometimes sidewalks would be added. Sidewalks would never be maintained, right. And so that's one thing that I think that this plan focuses somewhat on. And everyone says, well, why can't my street have a sidewalk? And a lot of times those streets might be residential streets where there's not a lot of vehicular traffic.
Right.
So it might not be an appropriate place for a sidewalk. It might be safe to actually walk on the street on that particular street. But it is something that sidewalk construction is extremely expensive.
It is.
Just because of what the materials cost and the amount of engineering that goes around that. A lot of people think, oh, you just slap down some concrete, but
right.
There's a lot of drainage engineering and other engineering that the city of Birmingham is required to do by federal law. So I think that that we would ask the residents to just be patient and acknowledge that every street in the city can't have a sidewalk. Every city in the United States and really in the world, every street does not have a sidewalk.
Yeah.
But it is our goal to make sure that our sidewalks are well maintained or ADA accessible, and also that our more major thoroughfares where it might not be as safe
right.
For someone to physically walk on to actually have sidewalks.
And just to add to what he's saying, I think if if we had a wish of unlimited resources, we could address all of these streets and all these sidewalks just in 1 year. But financially, that's not feasible. And so we always acknowledge we're not the experts, that at a certain point of time between our city engineers, our planners, and the Department of Transportation, and all of these other experts, they assess the sidewalks throughout this entire city. They assess the streets throughout this entire city and came up with this 5-year plan for both to allow us to put in category over each year and address them. And so as we continue to move towards addressing this every year, just know we hear you, know we'll get to it. It's not the fastest process, but we will pave these streets and we will repair these sidewalks. And
getting to the kind of, we approach the sidewalk issue from a financial perspective a little bit, but it's the same exact thing with street resurfacing. When we came into office, we have $50 to $60 million of immediate street resurfacing needs
right.
That need to be done. The city of Birmingham simply does not have that budget. People call in and say, why in the world would you not repave my street? Why in the world would you not pour a sidewalk in front of my house? And I want to say, I'd love to do that. I'd love to, repave every single street in District 2 and make my reelection the easiest reelection that there ever was.
Right.
But the fact is that there's a limited amount of resources. Those resources have to be divvied up amongst most needed and throughout the entire city. So
correct.
It is something that we're both cognizant of, and we speak about it. How often?
Every day.
Every day, probably. Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
So as we close out, going from potholes to street paving to sidewalks, we do want to leave you with some good news, and that is we're always thinking about the next year. So the next year you see here of sidewalk repairs and projects, we got about 4,000 feet with about $160,000, and you see way more sidewalks on various streets, which include 3rd Avenue South, 4th Avenue South, 84th Street South, 85th Street South, and then another part of 85th Street South. So just know we'll continue to move on our sidewalk plan. So as we come out of those infrastructure projects related to our streets and sidewalks, we now want to talk about some projects in various neighborhoods. I'll keep this one high level. Maybe you can't see this, so I'll read some of it. This is dealing with the Roebuck neighborhood, and it's a culvert storm sewer issue. And this is somewhere in the area of West Boulevard and Village Creek at the golf course. And so this culvert, what we're attempting to do, at this point we're about 15% complete in our work. The design is, design of this work, milestone, is slated to be complete in April of 2020, which is next month. The right-of-way permitting process is slated to be completed in June. We then will send it out for a bid, and hopefully it'll be awarded in July of this year. And ideal construction will start, pending the weather, August of this year, and we look to have this construction complete for this culvert on West Boulevard in the Roebuck area by February of 21. Anything you want to add on this project, brother?
No, I think that, I mean, you know, these projects, you know, you look at you see that it starts earlier in 2020, and then it doesn't get done until 2021. People call in and say, well, I don't see anything going on.
It's a process.
It's another thing that's a process. We by law have to abide by the Alabama state bid law.
Mm-hmm.
There's amount of times that we have to conform to, and there's a way that we have to bid it out, and so it's just part of the process.
That's right. So then we got some other projects. We got some public facility projects. So one of those is the East Precinct. We need to make sure that our officers that are spread out in North, East, South, and West Precinct, that their actual facility is up to par as well, to make sure we can continue to provide services to our residents. Here, the scope of work for the East Precinct second floor renovation, the objective of this project includes renovations of about 5,000 square feet for the entire second floor, which currently some large storage area modifications. Some scheduled milestones. Going back, the construction phase is 72% complete. So 3/4 of this project is almost done. We only got about a quarter work left. A lot of this work started back in 2018. The purchase issue will be started last month of February 25th, and we look to proceed to close out this project over the next 60 to 70 days to complete it. So that's just an update. This was a start-stop project, and we need to make sure we close this project out so we can focus on other projects in District 2.
Yeah.
As Public Safety Chairman, anything you want to add to that?
Well, you know, this is something that Birmingham Police East Precinct officers have been asking for a long time.
Right.
I think they've been asking for it well before you or I were in office. So I think that if anyone's excited, they're excited that this is finally going to be complete. So
another project is a public facility, our fire stations. Many of you all know. If you don't know, I think that's important to say. The city of Birmingham has over 400 buildings we're responsible for. And probably about 2/3 of those buildings are in use, about 67%. Within that, I want to say 32 of them are fire stations. A lot of our fire stations, you all, are 40, 50, some maybe even 60 years old. That means a lot of them need upgrades, upkeep, and overhaul and deferred maintenance projects. And so here we have the Fire Station 19 with a re-roofing program. The design phase of this project is 50% complete. The project design is underway 2 months ago in January. Expected advertisement was last month. In the ideal world, we want to send this out to bid this month. And so the project duration is about under 60 calendar days once the bid process is complete. And so we got to make sure that our fire stations, we take care of them so our firefighters and rescue unit in Birmingham Fire and Rescue Services can take care of us. Again, as Public Safety Chairman, I know this is a big deal to you. I know you have championed taking care of these fire stations. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, you know, from this fire station to the work that we've done on Huffman Road to really all of our fire stations, I think that we have, that we know our number one priority is taking care of those that take care of us. That's our firefighters and our police officers that put their lives on the line for us every single day.
Right.
And so, you know, sometimes I'll get calls from citizens, not just in District 2, but from around the city, and say, you know, I heard this was going on in this fire station. I heard this was going on. I heard this was going on. Well, there, you know, the city of Birmingham is definitely focused on taking care of their firefighters. A lot of the calls, you know, there's not a lot of accuracy to them, but I think that this administration, and especially the fire command, is extremely serious about taking care of all of the firefighters and paramedics.
Shout out to our new fire chief, Chief Moon. Thank you and your entire new leadership team at the Birmingham Fire and Rescue Service for your leadership. Definitely have my support, but you definitely have the chairman of the Public Safety Committee support too. So thank you for what you do. That's just a note. We want to next talk about the Lawson Field repaving. So this is another project in District 2. It's in the Eastwood area along the Porto Madrid area. The design phase of this project is about 95% complete. And so as you see, the redesign has been done. Again, it's one of those start and stop projects where we need to actually just close it. Unfortunately, we still have a to be determined date around closing this project out. But this project is centered around to repave and expand the existing parking area at Lawson Field. And so when we have events there, we can make sure, I know as recently as 2 years ago, driving through that parking lot can be held on your vehicle. So I got to get with my team. We've already sent this out to bid more than once, but we got to make sure this project is complete. Anything on that?
Yeah, I think everybody's excited about the lighting upgrades there too.
Yeah.
To make sure that it's a safe venue for those nighttime events that we have.
So we have another project in the Crest Line area. This is a street sidewalk improvement program, and this is in Haygood Street sidewalk. So the objective scope of this project is to provide a new sidewalk on Haygood Street to connect the existing sidewalk on Euclid Ave and Montclair Road, providing a pedestrian link between the cities of our neighboring city, Mountain Brook, and the city of Birmingham. This project is a cooperative development with the city of Mountain Brook and Birmingham using TAP grant funding. And so I know Councilor Williams can explain a little more in detail, but just some high notes. The funding is in place and the agreement with the city of Mountain Brook has been fully executed. The next thing we did was held public involvement meetings last month. And the design phase of this project is 60% complete. But you close us out on this topic.
Yeah, this has been somewhat of a passion project of mine. I'm very excited about it, and it's something that we've spent a lot of time talking about. But the city of Birmingham was able to work with the city of Mountain Brook to get this project done and to apply and win that TAP grant. That TAP grant is a federal grant that's distributed through ALDOT. That grant is usually for around $800,000. The program is no longer liquid right now, so they're not actually doing any more TAP grants. So we actually got the last TAP grant in the program for the state of Alabama. So
pretty cool.
I was very excited that we were able to get that. Each municipality, while the program was in full force and functioning, each municipality could only get one grant a year. So that's one reason that we've partnered with the city of Mountain Brook. While this sidewalk is 90% in the city of Birmingham, it does connect 10% in the city of Mountain Brook. So they were able to sponsor it for us because we were able not able to apply for the grant. And so we really appreciate them in sponsoring this for us, and then of course splitting the cost with us in the matching amount. So this is something. This is intergovernmental cooperation between different municipalities, and it's looking around and saying, you know, this is one of the streets where we get the most requests to have a sidewalk on, where there actually have been some instances involving vehicles and pedestrians. And while we might not have the funding to solve this issue in our budget, we were able to go out and find the funding federally, and we got those last federal dollars available.
Well, there's no tip or top, but there's definitely a tap. So we're happy about this project. I know Councilor Williams is happy about this project, and he held me to it until we finally got it done. So I'm glad to see it. So The next thing we're going to talk about is probably the biggest project to talk about in District 2, and that is the former Banks High School. Let me start by saying this. When Councilor Williams and I talk, this is one of the first things he brings up. And so to all the residents of South Eastlake, South Roebuck Springs, and for anybody else that passed through that corridor, and you always bring this up in your mind, or you hit your counselor up, or you talk to any of us, know that we've been active on this site since day one, because he came into office talking about this site. I think we attempted not once, but twice on a request for a proposal to repurpose this site. It has not been successful. Therefore, we are now moving to a second phase, because we told you all last year when we had a town hall meeting about this site that if we weren't successful on the RFP, we would move to remove this blighted structure that we deem beyond repair. And so let's get into it. The Bank School property. I'm going to do some reading because I want you all to understand what we're attempting to do. In addition to that, I want to address some scheduled milestones, because I know you all want to know the real question is, okay, so when are you going to tear it down? Well, let's get into it. The Bank School's campus consists of 9 conventional steel and masonry buildings on conventional footings, the majority of which is a single-story classroom buildings. This site includes a gymnasium, a central administration building that are both multi-story structures. The total building area of the 9 campus buildings is approximately close to 150,000 square feet. That's right at 149,500. Each of the structures is also interconnected by a series of open-sided metal canopies and concrete stairs. What does all that mean? That means this site is not easy to tear down. That's why I shared that with y'all. And it's going to take a while. So the abatement and demolition of the former Banks High School site can run roughly about $1 million. And so there's work to do. One of the first things we got to do, and now I'm about to get into the actual scheduled milestones. So one of the first things we have to do is request and receive asbestos survey and abatement specifications fee proposal. That's going to take roughly about 1 week. And so ideally by March 16th, we can have that back. The next thing we do, you see here, is OCA. That is the Office of City Attorney. We got to have them actually view the legal contract and documents and get their signature so they can bring it to my office, and that should take roughly 1 week. So that's about March 23rd. The next thing we have to do, which I'm pretty sure Councilor Williams is going to champion and make sure this is blessed, is get the approval of this appointment by the council. That'll take anywhere between March 24th and March 31st. And then we have to issue an actual PO. We hope to do that by the end of March, but definitely by the beginning of April. The next thing we have to do is the preparation of survey and specifications. This can take 3 weeks, probably towards the end of April, beginning of May. The next thing we have to do is receive the pricing from abatement and demolition contractors. That can take up to 1 week, which is somewhere around the beginning of May as well. Now, once all of that is complete, the estimated abatement and demolition of this former Banks High School site takes anywhere from 90 to 120 days to completely tear down. Our projected timeline, keyword being projected, is the end of August, end of September. All of that includes weather. All of that includes contractually doing all of these things. All of that includes going through the city council process and the actual process of, let me make sure I got my wording right down here. All the proposals we have to go through and getting them passed through the law. All of that being said, even if our ideal timeline is between August and September, what I can tell you with full confidence is before this year ends, this former Banks High School will be torn down.
So I know that the mayor is not looking forward to the time period between March 16th and the end of September, because I'm going to be bothering him on a daily basis about if we have done each of the 7 bullet points that we have to do to make sure that this facility is torn down. You know, this is something that that residents from all over the district, not just residents that live adjacent to the structure or in the South East Lake community, but really we've had a lot of residents come forward and talk about this. It's one of those things that, you know, it's sat there for over a decade now. It's a city-owned property. It's blight in the neighborhood. It's driving down those property values, and we want to do something to make sure that we can be doing everything we can to increase property values in Southeast Lake and in Roebuck Springs, and not detracting from them. Obviously, this having this structure there has attracted a criminal element that because of the thick steel and concrete walls, loves to shoot test their guns in there, which has become a nuisance to the neighborhood. But it is something that I know that the Birmingham police have been addressing pretty aggressively from that standpoint. But these milestones are something that we publicly are sharing, and we publicly are going to hold each other to. So I'm very excited about it. I know that this is probably going to be the number one question of tonight's town hall. It's the number one question that I get into my office, whether it be Facebook, emails, people tagging me in pictures of Banks High School every time they drive by. You know, I see it, I know it's there, we're working on it. It's been a process. It's been there for 10 years. It's taken us 2 years to get to this point. I'm really excited to see the structure come down.
So just to note, everybody, on this site, we want to meet these deadlines and timelines. But if we don't, I think it's important we start keeping a weekly track so people can know where we are. So if we hit a bump in the road on the timeline, at least they know. We want no distance between you knowing where we are on our timeline on this project and making sure we get to the completion of this project. So your counselor will know first, and we'll find a way to both communicate that to you so we're not in the blind, even if there is a bump. And we've been in government long enough to know we have these ideal timelines we want to do, but everything doesn't always work accordingly. The good news in this is this project is done before this year is out. We'll keep you informed and updated. Anything else on this?
No, just thank you for helping.
Corona Dad. Corona Dad.
For making this happen.
I got you. All right, everybody. There's one last thing we want to talk to you all about, and that is completed projects. So as you see here, we're just going to go high level on the following public investment projects have been completed in District 2. We start with Don Hawkins Rec Center. We did the HVAC that I know a lot of people complained about. It was too hot or too cold, but definitely when it was too hot. We replaced the HVAC in the gym, added playground surface landing, and tile replaced in the lobby. Fire Station 26, big deal to us, definitely a big deal again to Chairman here of Public Safety. We replaced the driveway, we did upgrades to the kitchen hood, and we did a new gas range. The Roebuck Springs Road improvement. We improved the drainage and widened Roebuck Springs Road from Observatory Lane to Chestnut Street. I know a little something about those streets because I knocked on a lot of doors up there and all those hills. In addition to that, Elderly Street, Sidewalk, and Nature Trail. And this is about connecting Montevallo Road with Scenic View. Now, the Claremont Walking Trail phase, I think I actually remember this, but we made this, and this is phase 2. We made it ADA accessible. We engaged in improvements in the sidewalk and signage to extend the walking trail within the median of Claremont Avenue from 50th Place South to the inner median near 13th Street Avenue as part of the Red Rock Trail system. If I'm correct, the counselor and I cut the ribbon on this along with 2 of his colleagues. I think included Darrell O'Quinn and Valerie Abbott. Yeah. And there were a lot of residents out there, and the weather was good that day, and I ate a good hot dog. So I remember that. Last thing we want to talk to you all about is the Ruffner Mountain Connector Trail. Again, this project is complete, but we made this also ADA accessible. Sidewalk, signage, and bike share markings as part of the Red Rock Trail system. Created the loop in the East Lake area and tied it into the Ruffner Park entrance. By the way, y'all, shout out to Ruffner Park, their leadership there and their entire team. Ruffner Park is a gem in our city. Support Ruffner Park. One of the, in addition to Bank School, one of the things Councilor Williams was adamant about is that we support Ruffner Park, and so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say Ruffner, I get
excited,
I get worked up.
Yeah.
You know, Ruffner is one of those unique things that it's a lot of it is city property. However, the park itself is run by a nonprofit, and Carly and her staff do a great job.
Hey, Carly.
Of running that, making it accessible to anybody and everybody, especially all the Birmingham City school children that go there, and most of the city schools within Jefferson County actually have programming there. They also are one of the biggest assets that I'm most proud of in the district, in District 2. It really makes that Southeast Lake and Roebuck Springs neighborhood extremely unique, because there's an entire nature preserve in the backyard. It's something, I think it's one of the most unique places that we have really in the state of Alabama, and it's the crown jewel of District 2 for sure. With some of the completed projects, I know that the Elder Street Sidewalk and Nature Trail has been something that the Eastwood neighborhood has asked for some people will say 40 years. That's older than I am, so I don't.
Forever.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's accurate, but it's something that's been asked for I can say generationally, way before you and I were in public office. And even before we were born, apparently it was something that's been asked for. So I'm really glad we got that closed out. The neighborhood's very happy about it, and I think they're actually going to have a ribbon cutting in the next few months, and we'll work
cool.
with the neighborhood to find out when that is, or to make sure that they're going to do that.
So I want to jump in because I don't want too much distance between loving on Ruffner, Ruffner Mountain, some more. Carly she's a gem, and her vision and passion for Ruffner and where she wants to take it, her board and the work they do, her staff and the work they do. We even had a retreat there. But people need to know this. This exists within our city limits. It is a beautiful place. This nature preserve within our own city limits. A place to get away within our city limits. A place to hike. A place to catch some city views and some amazing sights. A place to take your family. A place to go if you need some isolation. I mean, I can think of so many things that Ruffner provides to our citizens. So I just had to love on Ruffner some more.
Yeah, and you know, if you definitely go visit it if you have not. If you find yourself out there, become a member. It's $7 a month. Like I said, the city does not maintain it. It's a nonprofit. They maintain themselves, and they're one of the biggest assets that we have. Moving down to the Claremont walking trail, it's one of those things that, again, the neighborhood, you know, when I was running and knocking on doors, it was something said, we've been asking for this for 10 years, 12 years, however long it's been, and it's something that it was a long time coming. So I'm glad that we were able to get in office, get that done. It's I think one of the biggest assets to that Red Rock Trail system is being able to navigate some of those neighborhoods and connect, be able to go downtown, to go to different areas in the district. So thank you for that.
So two notes. At this point of time, I usually do a time check. What time is it? Nope, don't tell me. We are definitely over our time as far as our usual format of doing our town hall, then turning it over to Q&A. I know the counselor has a lot of questions that are on behalf of you all as citizens, and because of the format of how we're doing this, we're not able to engage how we usually do. So I would like to meet you all in the middle. The counselor is going to, you know, just say out loud some of the questions. What I'm going to commit to is to go out and have these answers shared with you all online so you can get a full detail. So you just want to run through some of the questions right quick?
So what I did is I compiled the 9 or 10 most questions that we have been asked in the past 12 months to our office from residents in the district. The first one is, what is the timeline with banks?
Asked and answered, but we'll get you some more details.
We'll make sure that we're in constant communication about that. What is happening with street sweepers is next. What's the street resurfacing status of Porto Madrid? Every year we call 311 to opt out of mosquito spraying. Sometimes we still see the mosquito sprayer come by our house. How can we stop mosquito spraying? What's the status and paving of Grants Mill Road? Again, touched on that. everywhere we drive, there are spots people dump. What can be done to solve this? Touched on that. We can put that in writing. In Crestline, there's a drainage problem by Mountaindale. When is the city going to fix that? That's something that I know that you and I have had a lot of conversations about, and we do have an answer of what's actually going on there from our stormwater team. About once a week I hear gunfire. Half the time I don't see Birmingham police come, half the time I do. What's being done about the gunfire in the city of Birmingham? And then lastly, why are we doing a recycling and trash pilot, which is in certain areas of the district, but not all. There's actually some really good information that your team has put forward on the website that I was, this sounds nerdy, I was actually looking at our City Hall website today.
It's cool.
But,
Which one? HALL or HAUL?
But anyway, it was the HAUL
Yeah.
website, and it's actually explicitly clear what's going on, why we're doing a recycling and trash pilot. So we can definitely get the links to that up as well.
So here's what we're going to do over the next week. Because we didn't have time with you in person, we're going to be rolling this out in detail in our various channels. Email, online, next door, social, and every other channel to address these in bulk, like all these questions, and answer them together, and then break them out so you all can know actually what we're doing to each issue. I will tell you something, as an administration we pride ourselves on, is answering questions. Even if you don't like the answer, we answer questions. And so because of time, we can't go through every one of these, and some of them are nuanced and require detail. And usually in addition to that, our department heads are usually here to go into more detail to answer those questions. But because we're limited with our time, know that you will get a follow-up to answers to all of these questions. I want to thank the counselor for being here with me today. I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening. I want to thank all the residents of District 2 for what you do, and continue to hold us accountable. We'll continue to address these problems. And I want to give it to Councilor Williams to close this out.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you getting your team together on short notice to put this video together. I know that last time we had a town hall, we had excellent attendance. We packed out the auditorium. It was, out of caution for both our residents and the fact that we're holding it in a public school, that we didn't want to take any chances. So thank you for getting your team together. I wanted to also personally thank all of my neighborhood officers that serve for free. I was one at one time. I know that it's not easy doing it. I know that you field a lot of complaints when there's not a lot that you can do about it. Trust me, I can sympathize with you on that. Also want to